Hi, I'm Phoebe. I came home with my wedding dress and found my sister throwing an engagement party in my house with my fiancé. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "He practiced on you." But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part? Everyone already knew, and none of them ever planned to tell me. Would you stay quiet, or would you burn the whole thing down? The bridal shop smelled like steamed linen and roses that had been cut too early. I stood still, watching the consultant lift the long garment bag from the backroom rack with careful hands, as if she knew this dress was more than a dress. I'd waited 6 months for this moment. Custom-stitched, ivory silk. Sleeves I chose because Daniel once said my arms looked elegant when I covered them just enough. The consultant, a soft-spoken woman with kind eyes, asked me, "Big day coming soon?" I nodded. "In a week." She smiled, oblivious. "He's lucky." I didn't answer, just reached out and held the plastic-wrapped future in my arms. All morning, I'd planned how I'd surprise Daniel tonight. Home-cooked dinner, a glass of wine, maybe show him the dress. He loved surprises. And I loved him. Driving back, I hummed the song my dad used to play on his old guitar, something about Carolina sunsets and coming home to someone who waited. The kind of song that makes you believe good things happen to people who build things right. Some people plan a wedding. I built our whole future. The sun dipped as I turned into our driveway. Only, it didn't feel like mine anymore. Too many cars. A couple of luxury SUVs I didn't recognize. Someone had parked diagonally across the gravel, the kind of inconsiderate chaos Odessa called carefree energy. My heart didn't jump, it paused. There was laughter echoing from inside the house. Familiar voices, not friendly ones. I stepped out slowly, heels crunching against the gravel I'd once personally chosen for aesthetic over practicality. As I walked toward the front door, I noticed the flower beds had been changed. My hydrangeas were gone, replaced by red tulips, Odessa's favorite. The patio lights I'd ordered but hadn't installed yet were already strung across the columns. The scent hit me before I opened the door. Chanel No. 5 and expensive red wine. Not Daniel's doing. Not a chance. I told myself not to overthink. Maybe it was a surprise. Maybe he invited people. Maybe I should smile. Don't be dramatic, Phoebe. I pushed the door open and stepped into my own erasure. The music was too loud for a home this size. Some indie playlist that was curated to sound rich but effortless. The living room was packed, maybe 30 people, cocktail dresses, suits, laughs too loud for people who barely knew each other. I didn't know most of them. A few turned to look at me, some smiled weakly, others whispered. One woman touched her partner's arm and said something I couldn't hear, but I knew that tone. My mother stood by the bar cart, pretending to be fascinated by a wine label. She didn't meet my eyes. Odessa floated through the room like she owned the air, laughing, gesturing, hugging people like she was being filmed. She didn't see me right away, too busy being adored. I didn't ask anything, didn't interrupt, just stood there. Did I walk into someone else's celebration in my own house? No one offered me a drink. I'd been taught young not to cry in front of people who don't deserve the sound of your pain. I was raised to wait until everyone left the room before I screamed. The dress still hung in my arms. My custom-made silence. I didn't know why, but I walked upstairs. Maybe instinct, maybe habit. I needed air, space, clarity. I didn't expect to find her in the master suite, in front of my full-length mirror, wearing my dress, the one I picked, paid for, waited on, loved. Odessa stood tall, posing like a model, hands on hips. The back of the dress hugged her tighter than it ever would me. She saw me in the mirror, made no effort to stop. She twirled once, like a ballerina. "It hugs me better than I expected," she said. "You sure you wanted long sleeves?" Her voice wasn't mocking. It was casual, like we were discussing brunch. My hand tightened around the garment bag still wrapped in plastic. I hadn't even opened it yet. I could feel the heat in my throat, not rising but sinking, heavy, not explosive. I said nothing. I nodded once, not because I agreed, but because I needed to choose silence over something I couldn't take back. Then I turned, walked out, step by step. If I said a word, I'd scream. And I don't give free shows. The bathroom downstairs still had a clean edge, white tile, no music, no audience. I sat on the edge of the tub, dress across my knees, unopened. You don't lose everything at once. First, they pretend you never had it. I sat on the closed lid of the toilet in the guest bathroom, wedding dress still folded in my lap, not even unzipped. The lights were dim, too soft for what had just happened. But somehow, my hands were steady. My heartbeat wasn't racing. No tears. No screaming. Just the sound of Odessa's voice downstairs, carrying up through the vents like a slow leak in a pipe you know will flood eventually. In my own house, I thought, and I feel like a trespasser with a receipt. I stared at the mirror, but didn't recognize the woman staring back. I considered texting Daniel. Just 3 words. What is this? But then what? Wait for him to fumble out some lie about it being a spur-of-the-moment celebration? My thumb hovered over the screen, then locked the phone. If I called them out, I'd look unstable. If I said nothing, I'd be one of the decorations in my own downfall. There wasn't any winning move, only the one where I kept my mouth shut and walked like hell through it. Eventually, I stood. The floor felt colder now, the air sharper. I walked down the hallway, past photos Odessa had insisted we hang, to look more lived in. I reached the kitchen, pretending I needed water. Odessa stood alone at the counter. The music had softened to some indie jazz nonsense, and she was swirling a glass of red wine like this was her home, which I guess she already believed it was. Still in the dress. The one I picked, paid for, waited 6 months to touch. She didn't flinch when she saw me. In fact, she smiled like we were catching up after brunch. You know, she said casually, he practiced on you. I didn't respond, didn't move. She sipped the wine, voice calm. Daniel always wanted me. Always. But I told him, go ahead, date Phoebe first. See if you're serious. Turns out, he was. She set the glass down. You were the training wheels, sweetie. I'm the ride. My hand wrapped around the edge of the marble countertop. Cold. Smooth. The only thing I could touch without shattering, I looked at her, my sister, and said 4 words. Get out of my dress. She blinked, almost laughed. I turned, walked away. Not because I was afraid to fight, but because she wanted a scene. I wasn't going to bleed for her show. I didn't break. And that, I think, disappointed her more than anything. I left through the front door without looking back, dress still cradled in my arm, unopened, like a secret I no longer had the stomach to reveal. I drove with both windows down, no music, just the road noise and the weight of everything left unsaid. When I pulled into my parents' driveway, I told myself I needed to see people who loved me, who would be as shocked as I was. That's what people want, right? Reassurance that someone still sees the truth. My father, Elmer, opened the door. No surprise in his eyes, no hug, just a stiff nod. Inside, my mother sat on the couch with a teacup in her hand, like she'd been waiting on a weather report that never changed. I told them what happened. The party, the dress, the words, Odessa's smugness, Daniel's silence. Elmer nodded slowly. Odessa's had a rough few years, honey. And you're strong. You'll be fine. She needed this more. Marlene didn't speak. She poured more tea. No outrage, no gasp, just resignation. It hit me then. I wasn't the daughter they protected. I was the one they leaned on, the stable one, the cleanup crew. Strong is what people call you when they want to use you as a wall. I left without another word. They didn't stop me, didn't follow me to the door. I don't even think they noticed I was gone until the tea went cold. Back in the car, I didn't head home. I drove around town, past old streets, old memories, hoping one of them would feel like mine again. My high school was still standing. Same brick, same field. I remembered the time Odessa stole my valedictorian speech and no one said a thing. They said it didn't matter. You both grew up fine. But this betrayal was louder. Some people rehearse your replacement while smiling at your loyalty. I kept driving. The roads felt lonelier than they used to. The real pain wasn't Daniel. It was knowing everyone expected me to take it, like I always had. like I always would. By the time I got home, the dress still hadn't been unwrapped. I dropped it on the couch and sat on the bed with my clothes still on. The ceiling above me was blank. Too blank. Then my phone buzzed. One message. Did you know they've already sent out wedding invites? The morning started the same way the night had ended. Quiet. Like a room after someone's walked out, but forgot to close the door. The wedding dress, still zipped inside the plastic bag, sat untouched on the armchair. It stared back at me like it knew something I hadn't yet admitted. I checked my phone. A few texts, missed calls, none from Daniel. The silence wasn't just silence anymore. It was evidence. Proof that no one had slipped up. No one had made a mistake. This wasn't something they forgot to tell me. This was something they decided not to. I opened Instagram. There she was, Odessa, laughing, chin tilted just enough to look effortlessly beautiful. My dress, still on her. Daniel next to her, hand around her waist like it had always belonged there. My mother in the comments, beautiful couple, so proud. I stared at the screen for a long time, not because I didn't believe it, but because I finally did. They weren't hiding it. They were just hoping I wouldn't notice. Mid-morning, I got a text from Mara, a college friend I hadn't spoken to in months. Hey, I didn't know you canceled the wedding. I saw the engagement party photos. Gorgeous venue. I didn't reply. Then another message came. A screenshot of a reposted caption from Odessa's account. A love story long overdue. The photo was of them, Daniel and Odessa, on my porch, under the lights I strung up by hand. I kept scrolling. Dozens of comments, people I introduced to Daniel, clients, friends. Finally! You two are soulmates. We all knew. They knew. They all knew. And still, no one said a word to me. I wasn't forgotten. I was replaced. The people who clapped for my betrayal were once clapping at my birthday. Around noon, the doorbell rang. A courier handed me a gold-trimmed envelope. It felt thick, formal, expensive. Inside was a wedding invitation. Odessa Daniel. Summer ceremony. Asheville. No, formerly engaged to the bride's sister. No context, just celebration. And tucked inside, neatly printed like it had been designed by a PR firm, was a small card. We thank Phoebe Dillard for her unwavering support in our journey. Support, like I was a sponsor. I sat down at the kitchen table, same one where I used to chop vegetables for Daniel's pasta nights, where I told him about my childhood, where we dreamed out loud. I wasn't even a memory. I was a line item. Later that afternoon, I decided to walk to the coffee shop down the street. I didn't need caffeine. I just needed air. But air has weight too. I could feel it the moment I stepped inside. The glances. The pause in conversation. One woman whispered to her friend and nodded toward me. Isn't she the one they wrote about? I stood in line anyway, bought a tea I didn't want, sat in the corner near the window and tried not to breathe too loud. An older woman, maybe mid-70s, sat at the table across from me. I'm alone. Reading a paperback with no dust jacket, she looked up once and we locked eyes for a second too long. You look like someone, she said gently, who just lost everything without a single death. I smiled, not out of comfort, but out of recognition. That's because it wasn't a death, I said. It was a decision. She nodded. Didn't ask anything else. Just went back to reading. That was the moment I stopped hoping anyone would come save me. I didn't need saving. I needed witnesses. By sunset, I was back home. Shoes off, lights low. That dress still where I left it. I opened my laptop, checked my emails. Most were junk. One wasn't. Forwarded from a contact I had sent Jet years ago when he was looking for real estate help. Subject: regarding the ownership transfer of Harper Villa. Wait, what transfer? The email sat unread in my inbox for a few minutes before I had the nerve to open it. The subject line: urgent, transfer of ownership request, Harper Villa. Forwarded by a contact I'd referred to Jet years ago when he still needed my help to sound legitimate. I clicked it open. Inside were attachments, PDFs, scanned forms, timestamps, legal-sounding language. Their names, Jet's and Odessa's, sat at the top of each page. My name? Listed only once on a line labeled Former Primary. Signed over? Dated. Notarized. I froze. They didn't steal the villa. They made me give it to them. My mind went straight back to the night Jet walked in, months ago, carrying a folder. Said something about taxes, some changes for investment purposes. Nothing serious, he said. Just sign these so we can set up joint equity and move faster when the business scales. He laughed it off. I was distracted, cooking. I trusted him. I signed. I didn't read. And now I had signed myself out of the only home I built with my bare hands and stupid hope. I didn't cry. I printed the email. The next morning, I was standing in the county records office. The room was cold, but the clerk's smile was warm. Until she heard my name. Oh, you're the previous owner? That word, previous, hit like someone saying, the funeral was last week, didn't you hear? She handed me a stamped copy of the transfer, dated and finalized last Tuesday. It was legal, irrevocable, binding. I walked out holding a copy of my own erasure. The sun was out. It didn't feel earned. You don't have to kill someone to erase them. Just convince them to sign something while they're looking in the other direction. Back home, I dropped the folder on the counter and opened my laptop. I typed the name of the startup, Harper Solutions. Homepage loaded fast. Slick interface, clean fonts. Jet's smile on the landing page. Odessa beside him. Co-founders. Visionaries. No mention of me. Not in the bios, not in the Our Story tab, not in the press section where they thanked early mentors. I was gone. And worse than that, I had never existed. I scrolled through the site and found the tagline, the one I wrote, half drunk on coffee at 2 a.m. Empowering space, designed by heart. I remembered thinking it was cheesy. Jet loved it. Now, it was quoted next to Odessa's face in a promo video. She called herself the creative visionary. They replaced my fingerprints with her filter. I opened a folder on my desktop, found the old pitch decks, my designs, early mock-ups, emails between me and our first investor, screenshots with timestamps. I gathered them all, dragged them into a new folder. Truth. Apparently, history isn't written by the winners, it's rewritten by the liars. That afternoon, I sat in front of a lawyer, young, sharp, too polite. I told him everything, laid out the documents, showed him the villa transfer, the screenshots, the paper trail. He skimmed, nodded, didn't blink. The deed's going to be hard, he said. Unless you can prove forgery or duress, right now it's clean on paper. I didn't flinch. The business? I asked. Messier, possible, but you'll need to go public, loud, and you'll need evidence of ownership, contribution, and intent. I had all three. Still, I didn't decide right then. Do I want justice, or do I want peace? The answer didn't come quickly, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to react out of pain anymore, not out of shame, not even out of anger. I would respond, but on my time, on my terms. That night, I was pouring tea in the kitchen when the doorbell rang. No one on the camera, just a box, medium size. Inside was a framed photo, Jet and Odessa standing on my porch, his arm around her waist, my hydrangeas in the background, my string lights, her smile wide enough to cut, a sticky note on the back. Written in Jet's handwriting, thanks for building our dream. I didn't respond to anyone for 2 days. I turned off my notifications, unplugged the house phone, let emails stack up like junk mail. The quiet wasn't peace, it was pause, a way to keep my fists from clenching too early, but the silence didn't protect me from what I already knew. On the third afternoon, I drove to my parents' house without calling. I didn't knock, just walked in like I used to when I was still someone's daughter. The smell of lavender and something old met me at the door. Marlene sat on the porch, legs crossed, book open, like this was any other Wednesday. I got the transfer papers, I said. She didn't blink, didn't ask how, just turned the page. I didn't know the details, she said, so gently it almost sounded like comfort. But I knew Odessa was up to something. That hit harder than the documents ever could. I couldn't stop her, she added. I didn't want to lose both of you. Both. As if this was about balance. As if my loss needed to be measured next to Odessa's tantrums. That was the moment it hit me. She hadn't protected me. She had protected herself from having to pick a side. I stood still for a while, waiting to see if she'd offer anything else. Some guilt, some attempt to make it right. She didn't. Just closed the book, sighed, and looked at me like I was being unreasonable. I turned and left without slamming the door. Loud exits are for people who still think the other side might come running after them. I stopped by Mrs. Delaney's on my way home. She was one of the few people in the neighborhood who still remembered my middle name, used to bring over pies in winter. I'd crocheted a quilt for her new grandbaby and had it mailed a week earlier. She met me at the door with a smile. "Thank you again," she said, "for that beautiful baby quilt from Jet and Odessa. Just perfect. So thoughtful." I froze. She stepped aside, waved me in. On the mantel sat a framed photo, Odessa holding my quilt. The caption printed below, "Gift from our hearts." I didn't say a word, didn't explain. She would have apologized, probably, or gotten defensive. Neither option was worth the breath. They didn't just steal my house, they repackaged my kindness as theirs. I left after 5 minutes, smiled, hugged her, said nothing. They had mistaken my silence for surrender. But silence isn't surrender. It's storage. That evening, I pulled out a legal pad and started writing. Not to vent, to record, every date, every detail. From the day we broke ground on the villa, to the first time Jet asked me to temporarily sign over my ownership rights, to the caption on Odessa's Instagram story, the night they held the party, I started connecting dots, lining them up like a prosecutor in training. This wasn't random. This wasn't emotional chaos. This was a campaign. Calculated. And I had played my part like a woman taught not to cause trouble. But not anymore. The quilt, the villa, the silence. None of it was coincidence. They bet on me keeping my mouth shut. That's their last miscalculation. The phone buzzed just after 10 p.m. I hesitated before picking it up, half expecting another unsolicited comment from someone who heard their side. But it wasn't that. It was a number I didn't recognize. No message, just a screenshot of a wedding itinerary. My name was on it, not as a guest, as the event coordinator. I stared at the screen. They planned to use me again. One last time. The photo was still sitting on my kitchen counter, face down. I hadn't moved it. Couldn't decide if I wanted to throw it out or burn it. Jet's handwriting on the back of it stayed with me longer than his smile ever had. That's when the message came. No name, just a screenshot. It was the wedding program. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe a tacky font, maybe something Pinterest-worthy. What I didn't expect was my name printed clear as day under Event Coordinator. Below it were handwritten notes. Confirm Phoebe's speech. Use her florist contact. Get quote for gift table. Verified dress code while Phoebe. I laughed. Out loud, alone. They burned the bridge, then asked me to decorate it. The worst part wasn't the audacity. It was how confidently they did it, like they never feared I'd push back, like they never believed I'd wake up. Later that night, Mara sent me a podcast link. "You're gonna want to hear this," she wrote. I clicked play. Jet's voice filled the speakers, calculated, smooth, the same way he used to speak at investor meetings when he hadn't prepped a damn thing but made everyone believe he had. "Yeah," he said, chuckling with the host. "Phoebe helped with some admin stuff back in the day, but Odessa, she gave it vision." I didn't blink, didn't throw the phone, didn't even pause the episode. I just sat there and let him erase me. Again. Same voice, now quoting the tagline I wrote, "Designed by heart, built with purpose." He said it slowly, like he came up with it while watching the sunrise with a pen in his mouth and a dream in his head. Being invisible would have hurt less than being rewritten. I closed the podcast halfway through, not because I couldn't finish it, but because I didn't need to. I opened my hard drive, encrypted everything I had, emails, sketches, contracts, receipts. I created backups on 2 separate flash drives. One stayed in my desk drawer. The other, I mailed to a lawyer I hadn't hired yet. I didn't sleep. The next morning, Odessa's daughter, Ellie, was dropped off for an hour while Marlene ran errands. I hadn't seen the kid in weeks. She walked in carrying a pink iPad. While I made her toast, she opened the Notes app and said, "Mommy says I can't touch these old ones. They're boring." I took the iPad gently and scrolled. There were recordings, voice memos. One started with Odessa hissing, "You promised me her name would be off everything before the wedding." Jet's voice followed, "It will be. I've got the paperwork lined up. She doesn't fight. She just disappears." Another memo outlined a plan: transfer all accounts into Odessa's LLC. Fast, before anything could get traced. I didn't cry. I forwarded them to myself, saved copies to the flash drive. Ellie watched me silently, then said, "Mommy says you're going away so she can have all the passwords." I kissed her forehead and handed her a juice box. That afternoon, I drove downtown to meet the lawyer. He hadn't looked impressed the first time we spoke. This time, he sat forward before I even opened the folder. "This is the kind of thing," he said, flipping through my notes and listening to Jet's voice, "that turns courtrooms." I didn't smile. I didn't blink. "I'm not asking for revenge," I told him. "I'm asking for reclamation. I'm not going to stop the wedding. Let them have their ceremony. But they won't get to walk into it with clean hands." He nodded. "What's your move?" "I'll show up, and I'll show them exactly what they asked for. A public narrative. Only I'll be the one writing it." He leaned back in his chair. "Roaches don't scatter when you scream," I said. "They scatter when you turn on the lights." It was almost dark when I got home. The box was waiting by the door. A courier envelope. I recognized the logo on the return label, Odessa's PR firm. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a release form, a waiver. It asked me to relinquish all legal and public claims related to Harper Solutions, Harper Villa, and any previous affiliation with Jet or Odessa. It even came with a pen. Now they're scared I might actually speak. The waiver sat on my kitchen table like a loaded gun. I read it twice before printing a hard copy and marking it up in red pen, like a teacher correcting a student who should have known better. "Waive all public and legal claims." That was the line they bolded, not the part where they acknowledged what they took. Not a word about my name, just a demand that I bury the truth neatly and permanently for their peace. I didn't scream, I didn't call, I didn't text back. Instead, I slipped the unsigned contract back in its original envelope, scribbled a note on a yellow sticky, and stuck it to the first page. Let the record show, I read it. The next morning, Jet went live on some investor panel streamed on Facebook and YouTube. Mara texted me the link. He was all smiles and hand gestures, sitting next to Odessa, who looked like a Barbie dressed for boardroom warfare. "Odessa brought vision," he said smoothly. "When I was spiraling, she grounded me. She turned my chaos into clarity. No mention of me, not once. Not in the timeline, not in the foundation story. Not when he listed contributors. My face was invisible, my name buried. I sipped my tea and watched, not with sadness, but with calculation. I recorded the whole thing, took time-stamped notes, clipped key sound bites. Erasing me on tape only means I now have evidence they knew I existed. That night, we had dinner at my parents' place. Elmer's 70th. Odessa hosted it. She planned every part of it like it was her wedding rehearsal dinner. Balloons, banners, over-decorated and underwhelming. The cake came out with gold frosting, stacked tiers, a banner that read, "Happy Family, One Love." No names, not even Elmer's. When someone asked who would cut the cake, Odessa answered sweet as sugar. "Let the couple of the hour do it." Everyone laughed, even Marlene. I sat in silence. I wasn't even a daughter at that table anymore, just background. The knife stayed in the cake, untouched by me. I excused myself halfway through the second toast and left. No one followed. Back at home, just before midnight, Ellie texted me. She never texted. She was 9. The message said, "I think this was meant to be deleted." Attached was an audio file. Jet's voice whispered through my speaker. "Once it's signed, she's done. She won't fight. She never does." No hesitation, no doubt. I didn't flinch. I forwarded the clip to my attorney with the subject line, "Deposition material." I didn't need to scream, I just had to stop playing dead. The next morning, I brewed my coffee slower than usual, set my laptop on the table, opened the Truth folder, and watched it fill the screen. Files, screenshots, contracts, voice memos. Then I booked my flight to Asheville. They wanted a quiet ending. I'm giving them a public beginning. I arrived early. Earlier than anyone who wasn't being paid to be there. The mountain villa stood tall like it had something to prove, just like Odessa. Same old gravel path from our childhood summers. Same trees. Same deck chairs she used to hate. Except now they were painted white, wrapped in linen, and labeled reserved. No one greeted me. One of the staff asked if I was part of catering. I didn't correct her. I walked slowly around the perimeter. Every detail screamed curated perfection. Tulips. Her choice. Handmade signage. Jet style. None of it felt new. Just borrowed. Recycled pieces of my life, arranged by someone else's hands. I clutched my bag tighter. Inside it, printouts, voice recordings, that unsigned release form still folded in my coat pocket like a dare. They counted on me disappearing. I came back quiet so I could be heard loud. The ceremony wasn't set to start for another hour. I slipped away, told a nearby server I was looking for a restroom. He pointed toward the back hall, guest wing. I knew the way without being told. Third door on the left. I opened it. My old room. I stepped inside. The bed was gone, the posters long stripped off the walls. The mural I'd painted in high school, sunflowers against a sunset, was faint, almost covered by a coat of beige. Shelves lined the walls now, holding spare towels and cleaning supplies. The closet door hung open, revealing labeled boxes, extra votives, bubbles for send-off. My room had become a linen closet. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I stood still and stared at the faint outline of my name, once stenciled in pale yellow above the headboard. Barely visible now, but still there if you knew where to look. It wasn't rage. It was mourning for a life I outgrew before I had the chance to live it. I closed the door, walked out, didn't look back. The ceremony started exactly on time. I didn't sit. I stood in the back, arms crossed, still and silent while the guests whispered, laughed, took photos. Jet and Odessa walked in like royalty. He wore smug like a tuxedo. She wore my grandmother's earrings. I didn't wait for the vows. I stepped forward, past the chairs, past the shocked expressions, straight to the center. Took the mic from the stand. No one stopped me. Not yet. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. My name is Phoebe, I said. I'm the woman who built the house this wedding was hosted in. I'm the woman who co-founded the company they talk about as if it came from nowhere. I'm the woman whose name was erased, story rewritten, and family discarded her like trash. The air froze. They forged my signature to take this house. They removed my name from the company I created. They made sure I wasn't invited today, except as a tool. I pulled the paper from my coat, held it up. This is the release form I was sent, asking me to stay silent, to go away. To pretend none of this happened. And then I hit play. Jet's voice filled the speakers. Once it's signed, she's done. She won't fight. She never does. Gasps. Whispers. A woman covered her mouth. A man stood up slowly and sat right back down. I didn't flinch. This isn't revenge, I said. This is truth. And it's long overdue. I set the mic down. Not dropped, not thrown, set. Like I had nothing else to prove. Odessa tried to laugh. She's always been dramatic. Jet opened his mouth, stumbled through a, "This isn't what it looks like." The officiant stepped back from the altar. Some guests stood, some left. No one clapped. I didn't wait for the fallout. I walked back the way I came in, out the same door, down the same gravel path. Outside, I stopped, took in the mountain air, finally exhaled. It didn't feel like closure. Closure assumes you ever had control of the door, but it felt like shedding a heavy coat. They called it their day. I made it mine for 5 minutes, and that was enough. That night, after dinner, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. "Phoebe Dillard?" a woman asked. "This is she." I was at the ceremony today. I'm a journalist with Asheville Local. Would you like to tell your side of the story? On the record? The studio smelled like coffee and cables. I sat across from the host, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a voice made for storytelling. We weren't on the air yet. She sipped tea, then looked at me over her glasses. Take your time, she said. We don't do sensational here. I nodded. My palms rested flat on the table, fingers splayed like I needed to anchor myself to something solid. The red light blinked on. We started. She didn't prod, didn't ask, "How did that make you feel?" like so many others had. Instead, she said, "Tell me what happened, in your own words." So I did. I told her about the house I designed, the business I built, the signature I gave away without realizing it was goodbye. I told her about the silence, the omission, the weight of being the one who always held everything together just so they could pretend they built it. And for the first time, I named names, not to shame, not to bury, but because truth shouldn't be anonymous. When the mic clicked off, she leaned in and said, "Some people heal by walking away, some by speaking up. You did both." I smiled. I just stopped apologizing for not vanishing. The interview aired the next day. I didn't expect it to catch fire, but it did. A lifestyle blog reposted the segment under the headline, "The Sister Who Built It All." I didn't know the writer. Didn't care to. But she'd done her homework, screenshots, archived photos, even comparisons between my pitch decks and the company's new branding. By evening, people started digging. TikToks popped up. Clips of Jet's investor speech spliced against my interview. Side-by-side timelines, receipts. "She never fights," he had said. The comment section didn't agree. Hashtags trended. #say, her story, #erased, but not forgotten, #Harper was hers. Jet went quiet online. Odessa locked her Instagram. Sponsors started issuing quiet statements about reevaluating partnerships. I didn't post a thing. I just watched. Not to gloat, but because, finally, the truth had witnesses. A week later, I visited the villa for the last time. The "for sale" sign out front had a fresh gloss. I walked through the rooms like someone inspecting a rental, not revisiting a home. There was no ache, just observation. The hydrangeas had been trimmed back too far. The living room had been staged, generic art, bland furniture. Upstairs, the wall that once bore my initials was painted over, smooth and beige, like it had never mattered. I didn't touch anything, but on the way out, I took a photo of the porch, then sent it to my lawyer. "Confirm closing date," I wrote. Some homes are built for the wrong people, some dreams too. Back in my apartment, I poured coffee into a plain white mug. No initials. No history. I sat by the window. It was raining. Not heavy, not cold. Just enough to feel like the world was finally rinsing something off. My inbox chimed. A message from a woman I didn't know. She wrote, "Your story helped me walk out of my own silence." That sentence cut deeper than all the years of erasure, because maybe it wasn't just about what they took. Maybe it was about what I chose to carry forward, and what I didn't. Justice doesn't always wear armor. Sometimes it just chooses peace. I closed my laptop, exhaled, and then another message appeared. No subject line, just one sentence. "You don't know me, but I know what they did to you."